was very inspiring to me because it was a tangible way to try to stop what was happening, our buildup in Iraq at the time. We had been very much against the sanctions that were happening to the people of Iraq and had been arrested many times for that, as well as going to our representatives' offices and trying to plead with them to vote in the appropriate ways to keep from these sanctions, to try to lift the sanctions on the people of Iraq.
Could you say something about the legal costs you incurred and how those were covered?
There's a Professor William Quigley, Bill Quigley, who works a lot with SOA. He's a School of the Americas Watch attorney, and he's also Voices in the Wilderness attorney. And he's worked with us on both trials pro bono, and also we raised funds, and we were able to do that. And when people give money to support the families, support the legal defense, such as the concert, that bothers the federal government more than anything you can imagine, I believe. After sitting and watching them, and the FBI officer and the federal prosecutor in the courthouse, I know that they can't stand that. And some people can't do other things. You know, it's to each his own ability, his or her own ability. And so if you don't have the time, whether you have, because you've got kids, you know, I've got kids I know, or you've got a job, you can't quit your job. Well, you got 20 bucks, you know, please do, you know what I mean? Tell everybody, giving money or your time is hugely valuable. And it can't happen without it. And it can't happen without it, the person who sweeps up at the end of the meeting either. All the jobs are equally important.
You know, my father was a veteran from the Second World War. He was in the Navy, and yet he was, you know, destroying draft files during the Vietnam War, and particularly choosing draft boards that held the files of very poor and disadvantaged people, okay, young men, because they were the ones who predominantly were going off to war. Coming up to March 17th, of course, I'm Irish Catholic. That was my identity as all as I was growing up. We were from the Bronx, from New York City. And so my identity as an Irish Catholic was very strong and always had been. And so as we were coming to March 17th, that was the day that we had chosen to act. I expected to be out dancing to my nieces playing music that evening. And so as I was planning to do this action, I took it very seriously, but I have been engaged in these kinds of actions throughout my life, and so this seemed to be another one of those actions, which I figured we would be arrested, we would get a court date, and then we would go to court at a later date. And we ended up being in jail for 4 days, and all up until midnight, I was still thinking, well, maybe we'll still get out, and I'll go off to listen to the music, because that, for me, is a really important piece of what my tradition and my identity is about. So we weren't, though, and we were in jail, and I remember hearing shock and awe begin while we were in jail, and I remember not being able to see the television. My cell was at the far end of this jail cell, or jail block, and it was very horrible to hear. This idea that we are to participate in nonviolence, especially as we are cultivating it, was very strong in my mind. The whole, build up to the war, this fear and hatred. At the time, we weren't supposed to call French fries, we were supposed to call them Patriot fries. I mean, just the kind of insidious, almost, I don't know even the right word to use for it, but it's just this way of trying to train our minds into hating others. The pastor of this village that we were studying, Andre Trocme, was quoted once by saying that fear and hatred are the tools to conquer a people. Fear and hatred are the tools that conquer a people. So when we know that fear and hatred are the tools that conquer a people, then we must resist fear and hatred, because we do not want to participate in being conquered. And the conquering is in labeling others and in keeping people at arm's length. So, some of the labels are, the drug dealers, the welfare moms, the illegal aliens, the terrorists, the redneck. All of these labels that we put on one another keep us from actually engaging with one another, and it's that which will conquer us all if we continue to allow for the labels to get in the way of relating to one another as human beings.
I don't stay silent anymore when I talk about certain issues. Everybody's uncomfortable with certain things. The war in Lebanon, that Israel attacked in Lebanon, and right now the Gaza, you don't hear about that during this Democratic, this election, do you? But that's our war, and a lot of people say, well, you're not Jewish, you don't understand. Well, it's my war too, because they're using our weapons. Every child, kid, every civilian killed in Lebanon or the Gaza Strip is being killed with a weapon that was it was given to and supplied by and made by the United States. And if you want to reduce terrorism in this world, you keep killing people like that, and that's why people throw airplanes at tall buildings. I mean, and nobody's talking about it, but I'm not afraid to talk about it anymore, and I'm not uncomfortable about it because it's my war too. I do understand, and if anybody tries to tell me no, the whole anti-Semitism thing, that not anymore. No, it's my weapon, and you're killing people with weapons that we're supplying to you that are innocent, and I'm going to talk about it, and I'm not uncomfortable.
You had done a lot of other actions where there were more people involved, and you didn't necessarily get pursued in the same way by the federal government. So if there's a larger number of people doing civil disobedience, do you think there's less of a chance that the federal government will pursue it in the same way? I mean, has that been your experience?
Whatever people can do, whatever, stepping over that little line of difficulty and comfort that you might have is very important to, just do it. And I'll just wrap up with something that my dad was interviewed, and he really didn't have very much, he had dementia in his last year, so he couldn't really speak what he was thinking and articulate his thoughts very well. But the interviewer asked him, can you recall the kind of feelings you had about the work you were doing, i.e. going in and destroying draft records? Was there a sense of that you were doing something that was going to cause change and that you were motivated by that? Said the interviewer. And my dad said, I didn't see it so much as a changing agent as I did see it as something that I was obligated to do. The obligation, which comes from the obligation to love one another. The obligation. And he said, and we'll square off from there. The obligation is there. I didn't see a larger picture being assisted by the action, but rather I should be doing what I'm doing because of the nature of the bloody Vietnam phenomenon. Fierce. The more we looked at it, the worse it got. So I'll just leave it at that. And yet, I have to say, I'm so grateful to have had this war in the forefront of my mind, because it's there for the people of Iraq, it's there for our own military service people, and it's so easy to get caught up in the daily grind and not engage in resisting. And so this concept of knowing that suffering is going to happen and will take place, but also knowing that you'll be okay on the other end is very important. And getting through it with love, via love, is very, 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 very helpful.